Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of NetApp ONAIR. As always, I am your host. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are rounding out our series that we've been doing over the last month since we did the big A-Series update launch of the video you guys just watched there. Back on May 14th, we've had updates from Keith Asen covering ONTAP 9.15 updates there. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of those things today. We also had Duncan come in and give us the updates on StorageGrid and the new hardware platform refreshes around StorageGrid and the new operating system updates. And last week, of course, we had Chris and Scott come on and talk about, do a deep dive on the A-Series. And today we're going to be covering CyberVault, another piece of the payload of that big launch about a month ago. So in case you guys have missed any of the previous 3 episodes, just know that we've got them all in the playlist here on YouTube. You can watch them all on demand and revisit and they're all chaptered. You can find if there's specific areas you want to see. You can absolutely go back to those. So today, last but certainly not least, we're going to be covering CyberVault and some other more discrete details around some of the security enhancements in ONTAP 9.15 and beyond. So we'll definitely have some stuff on that. First, a little bit of housekeeping. If you guys are not, make sure you get into Discord. You can join us over there at netappdiscord.com. We've got almost 5,000 people in there, guys. So come hang out with us. Ask your questions. It's a great technical crowd and community to be a part of. So definitely come and join us there. And Insight registration is open, officially open. Go ahead and get your stuff booked. You're going to need to do that now because it is only going to get more expensive. You've got all of the extra pricing now. You've got your cheapest flights and hotels that are available. Go ahead and get that stuff booked. I can promise you we're in weekly meetings at this point, multiple meetings per week at this point. It is going to be a packed show this year, so you do not want to miss out on it. Come join us at the MGM in Vegas for a few days of fun, food, and breakout sessions and labs and certifications and all kinds of good stuff. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, enough housekeeping. Let's get into the meat of the show. Today we have returning. He was part of the launch program as well as Keith and Chris were. You guys know him from the launch, Mr. Matt Trudewind. Thank you very much for joining the show again. Oh, I got to change the background. I completely missed out on that one. There we go. That's better. All right, Drew did it too. Okay. Thanks, Matt, for joining the show again. Welcome back. You were part of the big launch day festivities that we put together, and gave us a quick little snippet of CyberVault and the things, other associated things that were on there. But we're going to dive deeper today. It's also been a year since you've been on the show. If we don't do that, and I'm kind of looking at this as an opportunity to maybe start a trend here, where once or twice a year we do a security check-in, and we just kind of let everybody know what we've been thinking about, what the industry is leaning towards, and all of those sorts of things. What are the latest things that you've heard of since we did the launch over the last month?
Yeah. Thanks for having me back, Nick. I think that's a good idea. Doing some regular updates. As you know, security is always ever evolving with the latest and greatest cyber threats out there. It's a lot of the same things, that you've heard before, but companies continue to get hit. Organizations continue to get hit. Ransomware, cyber threats, malicious insiders, all of that. But what's really exciting is we continue to innovate over here at NetApp, right? And so we have new capabilities, a lot we're going to get into today, but certainly foremost on most people's minds is the CyberVault. And I'm really excited to dive into that one.
Well, let's start there. So just give me some backstory. I ask the other guys as well, how did we get to where we got to with the launch? Like, what were some of the what's the right way to say it? What were some of the initiatives, some of the design principles around CyberVault, and why we came up with it? Because if I look back on it, when I was a customer 15, almost 20 years ago, good Lord, that's scary to say, I was using tools like SnapMirror, like SnapVault, SnapLock heavily. Being in public healthcare, you tend to need multiple copies of things. You need to be able to lock things for audits and legal holds and all of that kind of stuff. So we were using those technologies. How do we get to something like a CyberVault 15 years later?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We actually, like you said, we've had this technology for a while, but we never really put it all out there together. And so the idea behind CyberVault was, hey, look, these attacks continue to happen. We have these capabilities already, but we haven't really done a great job of telling customers how to put it together. Yeah. So let's really focus on this. So it was an internal team at NetApp. We worked together. We took all the parts that we thought made sense, and we realized that, yeah, like we hadn't published that. So we put that out there. We actually had a few customers. I unfortunately can't name them publicly, but that were already using this architecture. And with that, we use that as a baseline. And so we took technologies like you said, SnapLock, SnapMirror, multi-admin verify, MFA, and we put them all together and released this document. So really, none of the technologies are brand new to 9.15.1. It's the reference architecture. So if you're a customer that's running older ONTAP versions, you can actually still put this together even then if you haven't upgraded to 9.15.1, which is still RC, obviously.
Well, let me pull this up here so we can have it as a just coffee table talking piece, if you will, because while we're discussing this stuff. So I look at CyberVault as a formalization of a solution, and I think it's become more prevalent around some of the. I think that if I can give my 2 cents on it, I think the reason it needs to exist is because we are kind of living in unprecedented waters right now around things like ransomware and just the level of attacks that are ongoing daily, hourly almost. But we've gotten to this point now where it's all of our customers running our storage. They want to make sure that that is the most secure of anything else. Obviously, you have your entry points and your IPS, IDS kind of stuff. But as long as they can't get to and manipulate your data, you're probably going to be okay. If they start going in there and start encrypting data in mass, like that's where you really start to see the troubles creep up. So as we've increased the technologies of ONTAP and these attacks have also ramped up, in my mind, there needed to be a way to sort of, here's the stereo instructions for how to put together an immutable vault where your stuff can't be. Am I going down the right path there?
Yeah, the exact right path, Nick. I mean, I think I saw a study from Risk Exchange or something like 15,000 attacks per week on average for most industries. So that's not going anywhere. Wow. Yeah, it's not insignificant, right? But the CyberVault is essentially, what are they after? You already mentioned it, data, right? The attackers really after your data.
Money, I would say. Yeah. They want money.
Well, data is the new oil, right? So it's like stealing tons of oil and getting money out of that. But the CyberVault itself is where you want to put your backups, and you want to make sure that those can always be recovered, right? Because you don't want to have to be paying ransoms, or really you don't want to have people accessing in any way those backups. There's a lot of different ways we say to do that. We isolate the CyberVault, right? And we keep it on a dedicated network, its own management network. We turn off any data access protocols because those aren't needed, right? What you need is basically SnapMirror. So, and we use a different management administration to it from that standpoint of, you're not going to have the same credentials to log into the CyberVault that you would your primary storage. I mean, that's really important. So, and also some of the technologies we've added in the last couple of years, a few releases, is multi-admin verification. Right? If somebody's trying to delete the cluster peer relationship, we want to make sure they really need to delete it. So maybe you have 3 or 4 other admins check off on that. Another thing I really like to highlight here, though, about the CyberVault, you can see it, I think, in the third bullet point down, is this using the lowest cost storage possible with capacity flash and hybrid flash options. And what that is we're saying for your CyberVault, you can certainly use AFF if you want to, but really it's designed for FAS and C series. Those are your arrays we're really pushing, right?
Cheap and deep.
Exactly. And you can have all of your primary systems actually replicate the data here. In fact, I think this might be a good time to show you guys kind of what it looks like. Talked a lot about it. This is what most customers have today, some form of this. You've got your primary storage, your AFF. You want to tier out snapshots. You want to send those snapshots to a cheaper storage, maybe a storage grid on-prem. Could be using some cloud, maybe an S3 object tier in the cloud, right, to keep more snapshots.
Or ONTAP now. You can, S3 ONTAP.
Right. Yeah, you can even do another ONTAP array, absolutely. And then you have your secondary site, which is typically your DR, right? And that's where you want to fail over. Well, the thing with ransomware, if you have a well-functioning DR system, and you get encrypted with ransomware at the primary, well, the secondary is probably also going to show up encrypted, right? Because you have those really short replication times. You know, you have a short RPO in general. So what the CyberVault brings in, it says take your existing estate that you already have, and boom, add another. So you can add this. We call it logical air gap. Why do we say logical? Traditional air gap is pretty slow in recovery, right? It's kind of the tape storage thing, but we have a logical air gap because it's only a pull operation. It's pulling data, clean data from your primary, right? It's putting in the CyberVault again, where the CyberVault is isolated. We have a firewall built in as well in ONTAP. We call it service policies now, but it restricts that traffic, that replication traffic to just certain AFF primaries, certain managements. So this is how it fits in, gives you a good visual representation. And there's no access to this, right? The only access to the CyberVault is from the primary. You can't get in here from your secondary network or cold storage. There's only one pipe and it's sending data. It's pulling data rather.
So help me understand one distinction there, because earlier you were telling us how when you have a snap mirror established, if your primary gets encrypted, your secondary is going to get encrypted. What's different about that in this snap mirror instance where I'm coming from primary to a CyberVault?
Yeah, so we're literally in SnapMirror, we're sending over the active file system data, right?
You're right.
And so that's your data that you want hot at the DR site. With CyberVault, we're taking our snapshot backup copies and we used to call it SnapVault, but now it's a SnapMirror Vault policy. And we're literally sending the backups to the CyberVault and we're locking them in a SnapLock compliance volume. Why do we do that? Because SnapLock, as you know, SnapLock prevents anybody from deleting the data, including administrators, until you reach that retention period. So if you set a 60-day retention period, you cannot delete that snapshot backup. Even if you try to initialize the array and wipe it out, we detect that and we say, no, you've got uncommitted SnapLock data, snapshot backup data. You cannot destroy that until that retention period expires. And so that's why it's so powerful, is because you have the indelibility of the backups. So it's not the active file system, it's a backup, it's a recovery point, but it's going to be there for you to recover quickly. So we still recommend using, your tamper-proof snapshots and primary storage if you can, to recover a little quicker. But if you have a mass encryption event, you want to know you have this CyberVault there with all of your data protected.
Love it. I'm thinking through some of the architect. This is also not. So is this a hard design of? I don't mean hardened in the security sense, but is this to have a CyberVault? Is this malleable in a way based on the gear that customers have? How flexible is this kind of configuration?
It is. It's very flexible. So it's a reference architecture. We tell you, hey, these are the best practices and the way it's set it up. But
this is the way we would do it.
Right. But they can also insert one of the things in there. It says insert your own RTO and RPO.
Sure.
Maybe for this particular, and that's what's cool. Let's imagine there's multiple primary storage systems. Let's add 2, 3, 4. I don't have it in the graphic here. This one might be updating backups once a day. Somewhere else over here, maybe it's not quite as important. Maybe it's just sending backups once a week, right? So you can very much be flexible with that.
Yeah. I remember I used to tell people when I would do 20 years ago when I was doing consulting stuff, I would ask people what is your tolerance for an RPO? Can you do 1 hour? Can you do 5 minutes? Can you do 4 hours? What is that? And they would say, oh, we want to be able to recover everything within an hour. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the price tag for that. And they're like, oh my God, no, and you'd freak out and be like, okay, well, you want to do 12 hours, 24 hours, and we can recover rest from tape? Oh, we don't. Here's the price for that. So anyway, the point I'm trying to get at is that the most important thing I think people can do when it comes to these kinds of things, as someone who's been doing this for nearly 30 years, is make sure that everybody, all the way to the top, understands the implications of your RPO and that they're on board with it, because they're all going to freak out at the cost of it until it actually goes down. Yeah. And then you tell them, well, remember that time you said you didn't want to be able to recover in an hour because it was too expensive? Ta-da! So if you communicate this properly, you'll always have great conversations. You'll have expectations set. Matt, I'll tell you a funny story real quick off the back of that. We had an outage one time that it was basically a storage outage related to a network interface that basically flooded it was a firmware bug in a driver for flow control or something like that. But it took the whole system down. I had consolidated hundreds of servers into virtual machines. It took all of the virtual machines down because the storage went down. Right. The most dreaded thing a virtualization admin ever sees is their entire vCenter just going italics. Free, right? Hair on fire. The smartest thing I ever did was separate our Exchange environment onto its own controller and own servers. Because as long as those executives could still get to their email, like the world was fine. Like everything, nothing else really mattered. So there's design. I'm saying all of this to say that this is not A plus B equals C kind of reference architecture. You can manipulate this to be in any way. It's really about just principles and a guide around here's how we would suggest you do something like this, at least as a starting point. But we were doing this in 2008. This is great stuff.
Yeah, there's malleable parts to it, right? What kind of storage are you going to use? Is it going to be, we already covered those options. But there are certain things that are static on this. We do say change your administration, limit it to a single subnet for management, and limit it to a single subnet for replication. So there are certain things where it's like, you need this for the vault. And then others, it's like, well, it depends on price, like you're saying. So
Yeah, you can do some customization, custom networking stuff as well that only allows certain IPs to talk to it, and you can do some port profiles in your switching and stuff like that, and make everything else non-routable so nobody can find it, turn pings off, all that kind of. There's all kinds of network configuration stuff that you can do as well to sort of hide that you're doing this and make it not discoverable. All kinds of stuff. I love this as an idea. Now we used to do snap mirrored to secondary, snap vault to tertiary, and then I would also replicate that over to a snap locked volume once it got to the snap vault secondary. Was I doing too much, or is that kind of along the same lines?
You were doing all the things, Nick. I wish everybody would do that. No, it's not.
Well, some of those got written off to tape from those as well. So I mean, dude, public healthcare is no joke. Shout out to all my brethren doing public health care and any kind of federal contractor work where you got to have that many copies of things everywhere for like 15 years. That's the life.
I think this is the new piece, right? I think that the CyberVault wasn't. You were basically doing a version of it when you were speaking of tertiary back then. It's just a little more hardened, right? I don't know. Maybe you were limiting the subnets through the ONTAP firewall and preventing data protocols. But I think those are, I know we didn't have multi-admin verify back then. So there's a few things that make it a little bit better. But at the end of the day, the concepts are still there.
Yeah, we were controlling it with physical separation, multiple locations, and networking, trick networking, basically.
Yeah. Still use a lot of those techniques today. Just a little extra. Give you a little extra spice with the ONTAP features.
Exactly. Well, okay. Let me make sure see if there weren't any questions or anything. No, I think we're good. So that's CyberVault. At the end of the day, it's a reference architecture. It's a suggestion of how we would implement best practices. There is a full document out there for it. You can read through it. All of that stuff is out there available. And I'm sure if you asked nicely, Matt would come and hang out with you and talk you through it. At the end of the day, though, there's so much more going on related to security at NetApp, and I feel like for kind of the second half here, I wanted to spend a lot of time. We had Keith on recently. He mentioned there were some updates. You just mentioned dynamic authorization and stuff like that. Captain's missile key stuff also has been added. I think, was that 9.14 that came in?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I know it's been about a year, so I definitely have some 9.14 and 15.1 stuff I want to highlight for you.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into that. Unless you have anything else about CyberVault you want to hit on, I think it's let's start our annual tradition of the annual security update and just talk about like the NetApp security posture as it exists today around zero trust and all of those sorts of things. Yeah,
let's do it. I really think it starts here, right? And I know I talked about zero trust last time, but there's been some enhancements. So let me recap real quick what zero trust is. It's security architecture traditionally applied to networking, but you can apply it to data, and you can see right here in the graphic, data is at the center of everything, right, that we talk about. Again, you can switch that out to money if you want to, but you have applications, users, networks, automation, monitoring, response, all trying to interact with data in some way. That's what hackers and malicious insiders are after. And so we apply these zero trust principles of trust no one, always verify, always assume you've been breached, always assign least privileged access. We apply that to our data and our ONTAP arrays. And so What I like about this is every capability you see on the right-hand side, and those are use cases. I'm a product manager. We deal with use cases. They're all built in. They're all no additional cost, right? So when you buy a NetApp ONTAP storage platform, you're getting these capabilities built in. You just have to turn them on and configure them in some cases. In others, they're already enabled, like SnapMirror encryption. It's been enabled since ONTAP 9.6, encryption by default. But what we're thinking about here is what are we really trying to protect from? We're trying to protect from these external threat actors and malicious insiders from damaging the data or stealing the data or doing things like that. So MFA is a big one. We've actually had we've had MFA for a long time, but if you look over the last few releases, we've added a lot more capabilities to MFA of who we integrate with. The big one that stands out is we did integrate now with Cisco Duo for MFA, both. We added this in 9.14.1, but now both the SSH, CLI, and GUI with System Manager. And of course, BlueXP, if you're using BlueXP now, we have MFA capabilities there. It integrates with Azure AD, Auth0. Depends on which way you come in, you know?
Yeah.
And then we've had roles-based access control for a long time, but you see I've kind of highlighted in bold here, the dynamic authorization. We're going to get into that, but at a high level, it's part of Zero Trust is we'll give you a trust score. And if we don't trust you, and I'll talk about what the factors are in the trust score here in a second, then we'll dynamically make you authorize again and authenticate, right? And make sure you are who you say you are.
I think Microsoft has implemented some level of that to an extent around the Office suite and stuff like that. Because every now and then I'll randomly just get told I have to authenticate again. And I'm not it's the similar behavior. I'm not sure if it's the same concepts, if it's the same things that they're doing through the Authenticator app and stuff like that. But do you know if that's behavioral or time-based or anything like that?
Yeah. Those are some of the things we do have in dynamic auth. I'm not sure how the Microsoft one works, but I've observed some of the same behavior for you. And it's like, that was random. I expected this once a week, and now I'm getting it at a weird time. Maybe it's because we do these podcasts, Nick. Our names are out there, so people are like,
"That's true. That's true." It is kind of scary. As a fun little side note, here, since we're doing a security episode, I want to give everybody a homework assignment. Go to your Office 365 account and go to, I think there's the logs, I can't remember what it is, but you can see all of the authentication attempts to your Outlook account. Have fun.
Yeah, I've looked at that before.
It's scary.
It is. Not for the faint of heart.
No.
But, you know, most of those things are about external threats, right? Hopefully they don't have MFA. You know, they're doing the things that look suspicious. Insider threats are a really big deal. I look at the Verizon data breach investigation report every year, and last year, I want to say over 20% of all the breaches involved insider threat. And usually those are actually more detrimental because they have more access typically, unless you're following Zero Trust principles. And so why I'm calling this out is you see multi-admin verify there. I know we've talked about it before, but we added over 100 new commands in 9.15.1 to multi-admin verify.
Oh, no kidding. Give us a few examples if you don't mind of like, I mean, what are we going to be looking for? And for those that don't understand the multi-admin verification, this is the old Crimson Tide Captain's Missile Key dilemma where two people have to agree. And, you know, I'm assuming this is related to deleting a volume, changing data, any kind of commands that would manipulate or destroy data have to be double verified. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how we started out. And actually, just a side note, you can go even more. You can have 3, 4, 5 admins, however many you want. Actually verify the stuff. It doesn't have to be just one. And that's important because if your Active Directory gets compromised, maybe they have several accounts. So you can go even further. But as far as the commands we added, initially it launched with what you said, Nick. It was protecting volume deletes, cluster peer relationship deletes, snapshot deletes. Customers liked it so much. I think it's definitely in the top 5 of our most adopted features. It might even be up there at 2 or 3 over the last few years. They wanted it for other commands. And the reason why it doesn't work on every command out of the box is we do actually thorough QA, making sure that things don't break, right? And so what they requested was, well, what about if somebody changes my snapshot schedule for snapshot create? Or what if somebody tries to flood the system by creating too many snapshots so you hit the limit and you can't create anymore? So they said, hey, can you start adding in things like that? So we've started adding in creating of new things, right? Not just deletions. So those are examples.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, we're taking a look at all the angles that they could have threats. I think cluster time change was in there and added. You know, so someone's not messing around with the time and dates and the logs.
Interesting.
A neat side note on that. When you first set up SnapLock compliance, is a question I often get. You have to set up your own clock. You know this, Nick, but people are saying, all right, well, what if somebody adjusts the date to get past the retention period I talked about? You can't do that because SnapLock compliance clock, you set it one time. You hope that it's right. After that, you can't change it. So
Can't change it.
Yeah. So that's how that's so immutable and
And it's
indelible.
gotten even better in later years here, more modern times. Back in the day, if I had admin access to the system in 7 mode, I could delete an entire volume. And those were the sort of DoD specs that we were working with at the time. You could not change anything whether you were admin or not within the volume. The only thing you could do was delete the entire volume. That's literally the only action we were able to do 15 years ago. Now we've gotten to the point where that you can even lock that out from being done regardless of who it is. So when you were saying indelibility earlier, fully immutable, like that is even restricted from people with admin access. And now we've taken it steps further with even multi-admin verifies. So it's gotten so much better than it was when I was day-to-day operating it and managing it. I would love to go back. Part of me wants to go back out and do this stuff again in a way. Because, oh my God, this is so much better and easier than it used to be.
It is. It's major enhancements, and so yeah, that's a big thing that we added in 9.15.1 is more multi-admin verify commands. I gave you a couple examples.
Well, we had our first question come up there specific to that, and I know we can't speak for Snap Center. I'll look to having the PM or one of the TMEs come on, and we're due for a Snap Center update as well, especially since we launched the new version a couple months ago. But any chance, when we get into multi-admin verification, are we starting to see it spline out into some of our other auxiliary software, or is this kind of staying specifically within ONTAP?
It's definitely, I can't commit to what's coming or anything, but it's something that we've heard of, and so we're taking that into consideration, right? So I would expect it's such a cool and unique feature, and we know that. So I think it's something that we're definitely looking into, right? Can't tell you a timeline, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks, Thomas, for the question. That's a good one. All righty. So where do we go from here, Matt?
Yeah, so we probably should talk about this thing I've got highlighted here, this automation security with Ansible.
Okay.
Let's actually get into that. What does that mean? So, new graphic. The problem with automation is typically you have a service account. It has some permissions, and you give it access to do certain things, right? And typically that's scripted. Of course, you can protect their credentials if you're using Ansible Tower. If you're not, you're just using straight up REST API scripts. It can be a little bit more difficult to protect the credentials. Maybe use certificate authentication. It's slightly better. But in general, there's still a problem with that. It is an account that has permissions and it's static. So what if you ever rode the bus, Nick? I'm sure you've rode the bus before.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. And so when you go in, you have to give the bus driver something, whether you swipe or put money in, and it's good for that ride, right?
Yeah.
So we call it a token, could be a bus token. Well, it's the same idea with automation. There's something called token-based authentication. You can see it here on the right-hand side. And you're given a token or a bus ticket to do certain things for that time period. It's a specific amount of time, very specific permissions. And once you're done, that's it. What does this mean? Oh man, now the hacker's unable to steal the service account credentials because all he can try to do is steal the token, which by the way, the token is encrypted over the wire as well using TLS. So it's excellent for automation. The protocol underneath is OAuth 2.0 or Open Authorization and OIDC, Open ID Connect. And using both of those, when you have this automation you want to run, whether it's REST or Ansible or whatever, it's going to use token-based authentication, good for that time period, and it's done. You can actually configure very short time to lives on these tokens. Maybe they're only good for 8 hours. So it really secures up. If you're doing a lot of automation in your environment, it's very powerful. Added it in 9.14.1.
Is this work with third-party stuff as well, an Okta or someone like that handles, that might automate some of that stuff for sort of federated authentication across a large organization?
Nailed it. Actually requires it. So we support today Auth0, ADFS. There's another one, KeyCloak. It's open source. You mentioned Okta. We don't support them yet, and again, can't commit to timelines, but we're looking at all that. So yeah, it's about having federated access to an identity provider and being able to get the tokens from that. So that ONTAP is supporting that. Absolutely. That's what it is.
Fantastic.
Yep. So if you use automation, definitely use that. So that's a good one we added since we talked last. Another one, dynamic auth, right? We already talked
So we
about
talked
it.
a little bit about this with Keith back on the ONTAP 915 episode, but I'm hoping to go into a little bit more detail here. He didn't want to spoil it. He knew you were coming to do your deep episode, so we didn't want to spend too much time on it. But in general, this one needs a little bit more explanation than the captain's missile key, the multi-admin verification, because there's a lot going on under the covers here. Can you kind of walk us through that and how the decision process is made?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you'll see here on the right-hand side, multi-release journey, right? So we have for 9.15.1, and this is one we're actually happy to talk about futures on, believe it or not, because we're telling you what our journey is. It only applies to SSH CLI, doesn't have GUI support yet, and we have the initial framework. And so what it is, the idea behind it, now I'm going to talk about where we're intending to go, and we get to specifics if we need to. You see we got Jane up on the top left-hand side as an administrator, has her location, what device she's using, what time of day, and what operation she's trying to do. So we're going to look at particular operations, right? In this case, it was delete a volume. And we're going to look at all these things. We're going to look at what's their authentication history, authorization history, time of day, all the things. And if it checks out, then we're just going to allow the action, right? But let's say that locations change, it's a weird time at night, and Jane's had maybe a couple of failed authentications. Well, in that case, we're actually going to prompt. We're going to request authentication again, because like, your trust score doesn't look so good. And that is one of the ideas behind this, is that we assign trust score to every operation and to the user account. It has a trust score, and it uses all those factors to say. So if the trust score looks suspicious, then we'll challenge for authentication again. If it looks really suspicious, in this case, we know Tom up there is a hacker. We can see his image. We couldn't actually see that.
But I mean, you can't see his mask and hoodie through out on the command line, right?
That's true. That's true. But it's a wild location. We haven't seen this device before. It's a very weird time of day, and he's trying to do a delete volume operation. We'll just straight up deny that one.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the whole idea behind it, is having this way to dynamically authorize accounts based on their trust score. And that's where we eventually want to get to. Eventually we want to add the full MFA support, have additional inputs and sensors, and probably do something with partners there. But yeah, dynamic authorization is key, a part of Zero Trust, I would say, and kind of building on MFA and multi-admin verifier, right? So it's another component. One of the neat things I like about it is we actually have a dry run mode or a test run mode, similar to when we did ARP, and it'll tell you when you turn it on in your environment, hey, this would have ended up in this many prompts for authentication or this many denies. You can go back and look at it, right? You don't actually have to enable it yet. So if administrators are a little bit not sure what's this going to do to my daily workflows, well, just turn it on in test mode. Let us know what you think.
That was going to be my next question. So if I've got a system right now that's on like 9.12, 9.14, something like that, and I upgrade to 9.15, does this click on? Do I have to go enable it? Is it on a per volume base? Like, talk to me through like what the day one ops of setting this up looks like.
Yeah, you do have to enable it. So it's enabled at a system level, and then it's per vServer, I believe. If it's not vServer today, again, that's something that we're looking at building it out eventually to have. But yeah, so it's not on by default, and you do have the option when you're first enabling it to set up that test mode as well. You don't have to. You can go straight to enable. But yeah, so it's not something that you have to worry about upgrading all of a sudden. It's just on.
Do you have to take one of those crazy psychological tests, or does everybody start from zero and it starts learning your behavior? Do you get any special bonus points for having an admin role? Like, I guess where does everybody start at? Is it kind of a flat, everybody's the same and it learns from there?
Well, you can actually adjust it. So again, like take the authentication history component, right? It'll have a default, and I forget what the default is, but let's say for right now, it's like 5. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, but you have 5 authentication failures. That's what we're looking for, right? And so it'll be able to see what it can actually check the logs already. So if you already had 5 authentication failures and you turn this on, it's already going to have that in the system logs. So it'll know, right? So it's not really so much learning from that. Has some tunability. We'd like you to use the defaults, and that's what we usually recommend. But if you want to put a heavier weight on, you see we've got this custom component support. So there's something called basically, yeah, Rapid API is an example. We have others, but there are things out there that can also give you a trust score based on your device. And we look at those things to get information. So yeah, you can connect up to that. You could give that custom component a heavier weight. So there's weighting to this. When I say weight, not like waiting at a restaurant, weight like as in percentage wise weight. And so yeah, you can make one thing higher than another. Out of the box, I think the 4 or 5 components we have all are the same weight, roughly 20% of the overall 100%.
And those weights are customizable.
Yes.
Is that what you were saying? Okay.
You can tune them. Yep.
I can see how it would be different for different organizations potentially for certain things. Good question coming in. Another one from Thomas here from YouTube. Thank you, Thomas. Get the idea behind that for cloud service or office, but who allows cluster admin SSH access from a non-secure network? Not Tom Hacker here. My instinctual response is to be a little snarky and say you'd be surprised at how much that's allowed. But yeah, I agree. I tend to agree with this sentiment here. Is like, I think the people that really know how to do this stuff well they're going to like this, but not really depend on it as much because they've got good foundational principles of security in the first place. But I think where this is really going to help people is the ones, Thomas, it sounds like you and I, that are pretty well grounded in security, and we already take care of that kind of stuff, but others might not.
Right.
And
well,
it's almost like a net that catches the ones that aren't.
Yeah, let's say that somebody spins up a brand new LIF or interface, somebody that just does the networking on ONTAP system. Maybe he's a junior guy. He spins up a brand new interface. Oh, he forgot to, either through automation or through his runbook, to set the correct subnet to allow access. And by default, it's all open access, right? But luckily, they enable dynamic auth already. So even though the network admin for the ONTAP array missed that aspect, dynamic auth is still going to help out there. So,
in what way does it help out?
Well, that's exactly what we were talking about with if they're coming in from a crazy network, right? Location. So what I was saying there is that if you have a junior admin who somehow has access to create new LIFs or interfaces on an SVM and incorrectly gave it access through the service policy of that LIF to open the default and didn't change it, then that's where this would actually come into play, because dynamic auth would have been applied and it would recognize that. So yeah, I agree with Thomas, is that you should be following security best practices at all times, but sometimes people don't, right? So
yeah. The number of vCenters that I've seen reachable from the public internet, the number of storage systems I've seen reachable from the public internet, like not everybody has that kind of default security first posture that we would all like to believe that they do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary what's available just wide open to the internet. As long as you can find the port number, you're good.
Yeah, we'd love to have the service, when you create a service policy by default, we'd love to have that be just to your particular subnet.
Yeah.
But we don't know every customer's networking environment, right? So
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's basically dynamic auth in a nutshell.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to continue. And you were talking about some of the future stuff. Obviously, we're going to get this stuff added into System Manager and things like that. It's not just going to be a command line thing going forward. We're looking at like we authenticate our own products, our own auxiliary products that we have to the storage systems. Are we going to look at for integrations anywhere from products outside of ONTAP?
Again, it's a lot like the math
question. Products, I should say.
Yeah. It's a lot like the math question, right? For Snap Center. I think that ideally we'd like all of these capabilities, because they're so new, to be across the portfolio. But I can't tell you when, but I can tell you that that's the way that we're thinking, right? If we have a new security capability, why not roll it out? And really the one where we do that a lot of times is Blue XP, right? That's where you do everything from it. So yeah, I think it certainly makes sense. Can't commit to it, but I love the idea.
Love it. All right, guys, if you have any more questions about dynamic auth, definitely throw those in the chat. Yeah. Matt also hangs out in Discord, and we'll have plenty of time for that. Thomas, if you're not in the Discord yet, come on and join us. All right, where do we go from here, Matt? Ransomware, yes.
Yeah, I just want to mention it a little bit. As I'm sure you guys talked about this, but the update for 9.15.1, we don't have to dwell on it, was that we're now using artificial intelligence for good in ONTAP, right? We've had autonomous ransomware protection, ARP, for a while now, since 9.10.1, but we had this new detection engine that has 99% precision. What does that mean? It means that you're really eliminating all false alerts, pretty much 1%. So you can count on them to be accurate. And 99% recall, meaning that we're literally catching 99% of known ransomware threats out there. So brand new engine. And one of the things, I don't know if you guys have talked about yet, but the way we're planning to add updates for this is much like we do other updates now, not necessarily through ONTAP upgrade, but you can do updates of firmware, outside of that. Same thing with this. Right?
There was a mention of that we're going to start, decouple it from the ONTAP updates.
Yeah.
In a way to where we could iterate on it faster. You could end up with a daily update of new blacklist extensions, new whatever, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome, right? And so it's really quite an upgrade to how we were looking at ARP in previous versions. It is still tech preview in this release, kind of similar to what we talked about with dynamic authorization being so in the early stages. But yeah.
Give us your perspective for people that have never heard of it before, maybe for someone that's not a current NetApp customer. What is autonomous ransomware protection and what is it doing under the covers?
Yeah, so basically it's figuring out what your workload typically is on a volume. And then when it sees abnormalities to that, it looks for these signals and it says, oh, this looks like potential ransomware. Actually, one of the neat things it does is it takes an automatic snapshot for a close recovery point. It'll actually do that even before it verifies it's ransomware. If it just looks a little suspicious, it'll take that snapshot. Then it goes off and does its analysis. If it is ransomware, it'll flag an alert. If it's not, it'll let that snapshot roll off. So that's kind of neat, right? Because we get that early signal. It's like, hey, we need to take a backup just in case. Then we go verify it because we don't want to blow up the admins with crazy alerts. And so that's what ARP is doing. Again, built in, no additional cost if you're using ONTAP 1, which I love. And it's a way to find out ransomwares early in the environment, which is really important. If you can detect ransomware early and prevent the spread, you're going to be much better off versus facing a full encryption event and finding out afterwards. Although if that happens, go back to the CyberVault, Nick, to recover. So
there you go. Guys, just to be aware, we do also have the ransomware guarantees out there. That is now extended to Keystone. So if you're doing it, storage as a service stuff. Oh, I beat you. Oh, sorry, I was stealing your thunder.
No, perfect. I mean, go ahead. Actually, you're saying it great, Nick. Right here, expanded support.
Yeah, so that has been extended to Keystone as well for our storage as a service offerings, available in third parties, colo facilities, and things like that. And I've used it personally. It took about 30 days for the autonomous ransomware protection stuff to apply to my volumes. A couple of them that were larger took a couple weeks longer. But if my version of it, I always say is like, I look at this, it's machine learning under the covers. The initial parts of it is it's literally learning the behavior of your admins and your users, and the traffic and the data that's being written and accessed on your systems. And because you'd be surprised how consistently repeatable that is over time. So once that behavior is learned, any abnormalities to that behavior, snapshot, just in case. And that's how we're able to get to those 95 to 99% kind of numbers where, yeah, you might have to go pull a few files from your vault, from your lock, from your secondary site. But yeah, you're not going to be spending the next 3 weeks pulling entire full recoveries from tape, or worst case, paying millions of dollars for a ransom. And that's the way I look at it, man. It's silly not to turn it on. It's silly not to have it, especially for you NetApp customers. Like, turn that thing on and let it do what it's at. The biggest thing it's going to cost you is 150 megabyte snapshot.
Yeah.
The best thing it could help you with is saving you millions of dollars in ransom bounties.
You can be really happy. Yeah. And that's our recovery guarantees. We stand behind it, right? So I mean, who else makes that kind of claim that no matter what, we'll compensate you monetarily if you can't recover. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So that was good. That was a good transition, Nick. I think we almost planned that. Would love to talk about something else new in 9.15.1 if we could. NFS.
Ooh, I'm interested in this. I haven't heard much details about this at all yet.
Yeah. It's another tech preview. I'll give you a good reason why this is tech preview. We have a lot of tech previews. In this case, we are releasing support before some of the major other vendors are that people use in the enterprise for Linux, right? And so quality assurance, QA, is a huge part of what we do at NetApp, right? And so we want to do the thorough testing. So you'll see in a future release, this will actually be enabled for GA workloads, production workloads. But what it is it's all about attackers. And as always, they're trying to intercept data over your network as well, right? They're trying to do something called a man in the middle attack. I always love that acronym, by the way, MITM, because you got the little I there in the middle for the man in the middle. Yeah. But yeah, so that's essentially what it is. And so for NFS workloads, we've been able to protect them in the past with IPsec and Kerberos, but Kerberos super complex to set up, and even IPsec better, but still a little bit more complex than what we'd want. So what if we could do this natively in the protocol? NetApp was part of the council that was on there as for the developing the RFC. We had input into that. And so, yeah, we've added NFS over TLS. It uses TLS 1.3, and it provides encryption in flight to prevent those man-in-the-middle attacks. If they intercept the traffic between your NFS client, your ONTAP cluster, it's just going to be encrypted using TLS.
Gobbledygook. They're not even going to know what it is. Yeah,
exactly. What's neat about it too is using TLS 1.3, every time you set up a new session, we use something called perfect forward secrecy, or PFS, to use a brand new key, brand new every time. So if they were even able to eventually decrypt something, it would just be for that session. And by the way, it's going to take a long time, and all the other sessions they copy be useless. So
until we get Quantum on a laptop, and then we'll probably have something more secure by then.
Yeah, good news there. NIST recently, I think they're about to release the FIPS validated encryption algorithms that are quantum safe. We have been waiting on that here at NetApp because we do not want to put quantum safe algorithms out there unless they're NIST FIPS validated, because our government customer is very important. So that's what we've been waiting on. So yeah, stay tuned. That's all I can say. But you can see,
there's a reason why the NSA picked us as the most secure storage in the world, guys, and that's all there is to it. There's nobody else doing this kind of stuff, man. It's just it's fantastic.
Absolutely, we stay on top of that stuff. But yeah, so it's simplified configuration. You can use certificates for the authentication. We support NFS v3 and v4. You can actually enable it per LIF, so you can decide this LIF needs TLS, NFS over TLS. This doesn't. This other one doesn't. What you'll see in the future, obviously, production support, but also once we get the right support, we'll have a better idea of what the performance looks like. So we can't really share performance numbers now because we don't have the official clients for support. Once we get those, they'll start sharing those numbers, and we all expect that it'll be better performing than Kerberos or IPsec.
That would make sense. There's a lot of computational stuff that goes on behind the scenes of a Kerberos or IPsec connection. So TLS being very lightweight, I'm excited about this because a lot of the reasons people stick with NFS v3 is because it doesn't have a lot of the overhead. It's an IP allow or deny, and that's it. That's you don't have to deal with it. So it's lazy, yes, but it gets a lot of things out of the way. For those that are super security conscious, though, I think you're going to love the performance of using TLS instead of IPsec or Kerberos authentication for NFS v4, for et cetera, or 4.1, wherever that authentication kicks in.
I think they're definitely going to love the configuration aspects of it. So much more simple. And on the certificate side, if you add the IP address and the host name into the subject alternative name, the same part of the cert, you can mount either way. So that's just a little
beautiful.
Tech tip. Yeah, add both. So.
And you mentioned this was in tech at the beginning. You mentioned this was in tech preview because we're still waiting on everybody else to come along for the ride. Is that
and they've started to release that. So I know Red Hat 9.4. It's an option. I think that they've stated 9.5 is where they're going to officially add support. So stay tuned on that. But yeah, so they're coming out about the same time as us, and now we'll have access to the production runs, and we'll start the cycle of testing it. And once we feel confident, we'll add that production support.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Thomas is over in Discord now. He just said VMware support for NFS over TLS would be great. I tend to agree with that. Yeah. Good point, Thomas.
Yep.
All right. I'm very excited about this. NFS NAS for life fanboy. If I never have to look at another WWPN, it won't be too soon. I'm in that camp. But I'm very excited about the lightweightness of TLS and using it as such a kind of a cool protocol. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah,
And I
and
love that
actually,
it can be enabled per lift. I definitely want to highlight that again. That's
yep,
really cool. The level of granularity to be able to do that on. Are we
yeah,
looking at going any further down than the lift?
yeah. I mean,
I don't
again,
know that we can.
we've had some customer requests for export policy. We've had requests. Again, can't really comment on futures, but there you go.
Fair? Yeah.
If we continue to have requests, we usually try to do what our customers ask. So, but one of the neat things, last thing I'll mention on it is, with our launch of our new AFF arrays, AFF 1K 7090, I believe, you know the model numbers better than me. We actually also said that we were including offload cards as
Yeah.
well. We actually announced that, and offload cards for TLS and IPsec. Now that is not offload is not supported today, but the cool thing is you're future proof. If you buy one of those new platforms and get the offload card, well, and now you start using some of these, you can see where we're going there, right? We want to offload it to make the performance even better. So
This kind of goes back to some of the composable designs and modular designs of how when we were talking with the guys last week, one of the fundamentals of it was you can Lego brick this however you want to, in the sense of like how you want to connect to it, what you want to offload, and it's only going to get more and more modular as we go forward. I want to say more, but I can't because my lips are sealed. But at the same time, the future is very bright. I'm especially around things like security, Metro Cluster, like a lot of those things. You're going to start seeing some really cool advancements on. So coming soon.
Yep, and then kind of I know kind of getting close to the end, but I just want to remind everybody. You already mentioned this, our NSA certification, but yeah, these are some of our third-party validations. So you hear me say how great our security is, but you don't have to take our word for it. We've got common criteria, sir. We actually had that back in the 7.0 days. First enterprise storage vendor with common criteria. We keep that up to date. Even Storage Grid has it as well, E-Series. And then FIPS, I already talked about FIPS, and 140-2 and NIST and stuff. And you can actually see our 140-3 certification is in progress. If you check the NIST site, that's public. You can see we're working on that, right? So we're pretty high in the queue there. That's neat. The Department of Defense is approved product list. DoD is important, and you have to go through STIGs. I'm sure you all know all about STIGs, Nick, and remember that process. ONTAP has its own STIG, which is neat. So you can apply that. And yeah, we're a validated product, approved product rather, for the DoD. I mean, that's not easy to obtain. But despite all those, the biggest one is, CSFC, Commercial Solutions for Classifieds, literally validated to host secret or top secret data for the NSA.
Yep. I mean, and this is not something that happened last week, guys. Like I remember one of the reasons that I chose SnapLock in 2007, 2008 as a customer was because it had that DoD spec tied into it as a definition of what could and couldn't be done to a volume in SnapLock. Like that's all I needed to hear. And so, I mean, we've been doing this for 20 plus years. All of these different certifications, and we've gone through all the FedRAMPs for all of our products in the cloud, all of the various Azure Gov, GovCloud, AWS GovCloud, all of that stuff. All of those are done. Man, everybody worked hard on getting all that stuff done for the cloud stuff for the last 5 or 6 years. All of that stuff is out there. This is it's a big old badge we like to wear on our sleeves because ain't nobody else got this stuff.
No, I think it's why with Nick we can say that we are the most secure storage on the planet.
We're not saying that. The effing NSA is saying that.
Yeah.
We can put it on a slide, but I'll send you there's links to the NSA articles and stuff like that. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but there's not any other place that focuses on cybersecurity that I'm aware of more than the NSA.
I mean, I gotta agree with you. Yeah.
So yeah. Let's see. We got any final questions here? I'm just taking a quick peek around. I don't see any yet. So, was that your last slide you had there?
It was actually, yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll admit, guys, if you have questions, throw them in chat for the last few minutes here, because otherwise I'm just going to start rapping with Matt. What's left? Like, talk to just as a security specialist. Like, let's talk about the industry at large. Like, what's left? What have we got left to tackle? What keeps you up at night? What are the big ideas that are going around the industry right now that really tickle your fancy, on NetApp or not? Like, I'm from a security professional perspective. Like, what are you constantly paying attention to?
Much like everybody else, it's AI, and what I worry about is this data, right? People are using these LLMs, and you got to be careful about that. You need to secure that environment as well. What's the security of the AI? In fact, we recently released a white paper. Justin Spears, a colleague of mine, he calls it the NetApp AI Security Framework, NAISC, or NAISF rather. And so, that white paper's out there. I think it shares a lot of good thoughts. I kind of, I didn't write it, but I had some comments on it. Said it should go in some directions. And how do you secure that? So I think everyone's talking about AI, and I think that's going to be very important, because the ways you go about securing AI, they're similar, but they also can be a little bit different. There's some basics, much like we were talking about earlier with the CyberVault. Certain things are malleable, and so that is a concern. On the other side of it, I was going to say, I hear this a lot. People say, "Oh, AI can be used for evil. What are we worried about?" Yeah, sure, but you know what we found out? Phishing is still huge, man. I mean, it's just so easy. Human beings, that's what keeps me up at night. The mistakes that we
I got my NetApp Gold Star this morning because I reported a phishing email.
Did you? Okay, cool.
Hi, Mignona. Hi, yes. I got my Gold Star today because I reported one. It was very clever, and I almost clicked on it because we do a lot of collaborating for our events and stuff with outside agencies, and it was masked as a Google Drive share link. And it wasn't until one thing caught my eye. I was half a second away from clicking on it.
Oh man!
And then I happened to pop down the header and look at the domain name, and I was just like, nope, almost go. You almost had me.
The CSO would have got you, man. You'd have been in trouble with Mignana.
Yeah.
So now that's what continues to keep me up. I was at RSA Security Conference, and it's just wild that's still the number one way people are getting in is phishing. They're like, attackers could try to use AI, but why do they need to? They don't really need to right now.
Just offer people 10% off coupons at donut shops and do silly stuff that's going to disarm them and keep their guards down. You mentioned one thing about just securing AI in general and taking care of your data from LLMs and stuff like that. And I think you're discussing that in the context of the public stuff, the open AIs, the Google Geminis and things like that of the world. So Apple did they've got WWDC going on this week, and they had their keynote. Was it yesterday? Monday. They've taken an interesting stance on it to where they're kind of sandboxing it to the devices. How do you see that playing out in a larger way? I know that's the consumer side of the world, but if we look at it from the enterprise side, how could we? Is that something we've looked at? Is that something that the enterprise needs to look more at? Would it be possible to self-contain it within a storage system so that it was all just being processed on box? That seems to be the way they're going about it from a security standpoint.
Yeah. What's great is we have technology that you can do that, right? And some of that's in the that framework I was talking about. But storage virtual machines are exactly that. IP spaces are exactly that. So you can take some of our existing secure multi-tenancy and certainly deploy it in that model. I think it comes to a question of who needs to collaborate on it, right? And who needs access. But I think that is kind of the way to go. And then if you need to share something out, because this is proprietary information, that's where you set up something like maybe use a SnapMirror, maybe set up a cloud instance. I'm going to send this portion, but this other portion of it, I'm going to FlexClone and keep off for my development to do my own things. But now I've got my public. So it's very similar to how people used to do, dev versions, right? And you'd have different versions of, okay, this is production, this is QA, this is UAT. I think we should look at that, but take it to the next level. So I think that is a very good idea, but it always depends on, what sort of the requirements are at the organizational level. And that really comes back to that. If you think about the NIST cybersecurity framework, they added govern in the recent 2.0 release, and it's a lot about internal processes. What is your risk? It's always a risk reward. How much do you need to collaborate? Is that something you should be doing? So I guess it's a long-winded answer of saying it depends, but we're capable of doing that for customers that want to.
As just a final closing thought here, I think for those people that have been NetApp customers for a long time, you remember what an impactful thing FlexClones and deduplication were when we were getting into virtualization in the mid to late 2000s. You remember that because it was that profound. And I think we are about to come full circle. And I think FlexClones, and now we have even more data compaction technologies that are out there with compression and, just the increased algorithmic work that we do with, deduplication and things. I think it's going to have a full circle renaissance. I think with AI exploding data on scales we've ever seen, bigger than we've ever seen, I think FlexClone and deduplication and just data compaction in general is about to have a huge renaissance. Because I think we're about to 10x the data footprint that we're going to see once we start building all these models. Once people start going and getting all of their backups ever, and then all of their files ever, and then giving it to an AI to build a model around it. Yeah, I think we're going to start seeing some pretty crazy stuff. But good old ONTAP. Good old ONTAP fundamentals stick around, and I think to be able to flex clone a volume, and then go off somewhere and train something else with it, train other models from that same existing framework. Like, you're going to be able to do that with snapshots.
Yeah, in a secure way.
In an extremely secure way, likely on box as well. And that's where my question was initially going. Is like, I think that good old ONTAP 101 is about to have another moment in the sun, just like it did with virtualization, with the same fundamental technologies that have always made it great for the last 30 plus years. So stay tuned. And I know security is a big part of that. But Matt, thank you so much for joining us again today. We're gonna figure out whether we want to do it biannually or annually. We're gonna do these security check-ins on a regular basis going forward. I know we got Insight coming up in 3 months. There's likely going to be some stuff related there. We're going to do some shows as well while we're there as well. So we'll have you back on to any updates or announcements that you guys have. But yeah, man, thanks so much for coming back and joining the show. Thanks so much for all the information. And if you hang out in Discord, Matt does too. So be sure and add him, ping him if you have any specific questions in the on-air chat channel or just in the security discussion channel. So
absolutely.
But yeah, thanks so much, Matt. I really appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. Always great to be here.
All right. Well, guys, there you go. As I said earlier at the beginning of the show, Insight registration is open. You can go register right now. Make sure you get in there and get your registration done. It is on September 23rd through the 25th. Come hang out with me and everybody else at NetApp over at the MGM here in Las Vegas. Represent. But yes, you have to register. You got to get your flights. You got to get your hotels and all that stuff booked. It's only going to get more expensive. Go ahead and do it now. While you're doing that, go ahead and get into our Discord community as well. You've heard me mention it a few times during the show. There's almost 5,000 people in there. It's the hub of all of our community activity here at NetApp. So we hanging out in there all the time, and plenty of technical support. If you just want to ask some theory crafting kind of questions, or hell, just show off your new hobby. You go on a cool hike, or you make some cool barbecue. We've got some barbecue aficionados in there, including myself. So thanks so much, guys. We're live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific right here on the NetApp YouTube channel. Thanks to everybody for watching across Twitch, LinkedIn, Discord, and right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribed and make sure you got your notifications turned on, and you can find everything else in the description down below. Thanks. We'll see you next week. Take care.